everyone. Welcome back to In Her Wallet, a weekly podcast helping women around the world take control of their finances for good and build better financial futures, one episode at a time. My name is Sofiia. I'm the host of In Her Wallet podcast, creator of In Her Wallet membership platform, and an accredited investment representative here in Canada. The reason you probably clicked on this episode is you are curious to learn about the connection between emotional intelligence and our personal finances. There is not a lot of content out there about this, and that's one of the main reasons why I thought it'd be cool to bring an expert from this field to the podcast to talk about what emotional intelligence in terms of finances is, how can we evaluate it, and how can we level up our emotional intelligence so we can earn more money. I have a guest expert, as I mentioned, joining us today. Her name is Leisse Wilcox. She is a 2 times best-selling author who works with executives in helping them uncover what their money beliefs are and how they affect their earning capabilities. I left this conversation feeling inspired and transformed, and the reason for that is because Leisse really shares her intimate story of building her first six-figure business while navigating cancer and also solo parenting her 3 girls. Despite the many challenges that life threw at her, she has been featured in major media publications such as Entrepreneur, Financial Post, Refinery 29, CNN, and so much more. She is an expert in this field, and I'm so excited for you guys to tune into this episode. But before we get into it, guys, if you feel like In Her Wallet podcast brings you value in any way, I would so appreciate if you took the time, 30 seconds max, to leave us a review and a star rating. All you have to do is open an Apple Podcasts app or Spotify. You can leave us a star rating there too. Scroll all the way down. At the bottom, you'll see leave a review. You leave 5 stars if you feel like we have earned it. And also leave us a written review. You can mention the guests you want to see, the information that you resonate with on the podcast, really anything. All of this helps me show up as a better host for you and also deliver information that's really valuable to you as listeners. All right, with that, let's dive into this episode. Leisse, I'm so excited to welcome you to In Her Wallet podcast and have this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this for a long time.
Why don't we start with an icebreaker so our community at In Her Wallet can get to know you? Tell me, what's your go-to coffee order?
Decaf 2 cream, unless my husband is making it first thing in the morning, and then it's a double latte with a sprinkle of cinnamon.
Oh, yeah.
And I have sent it back if it's not the right way.
I love the whole sprinkle of cinnamon situation, especially as we're heading into fall. On point.
Me too.
What's the movie you can rewatch again and again?
You know, I don't think Almost Famous is my favorite movie, but I don't really love watching movies over and over again. However, TV shows, I'm a total HBO freak, and I've seen The Wire 5 times in its entirety. I'm getting ready to watch The Sopranos yet again. Like TV shows, I can watch over and over again. The Office, I've seen 14. Like I watched it 14 times during the pandemic. But movies, I'm like, I've seen it. I don't need to see it again.
Oh, nice. If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Sayulita, Mexico. Have you heard of Sayulita before?
No.
So it's a tiny little surf town just, I think, northeast of Puerto Vallarta. And it's our retirement plan. Like my site is set on Sayulita, and I think about it quite a bit.
Is it different from like Cancun and Tulum? Is it a different vibe?
It is a much different vibe because it's really not focused on the party aspect. I mean, it's Mexico. There's going to be a party vibe, but it's like people are focused on healthy living. They're just walking around barefoot. It's a big community. There are a lot of Canadian expats who live there. So there's like a big Canadian vibe there.
Oh, I love this for you. I'll definitely make sure to hopefully put it on our travel list one day.
I think you'll love it.
Leisse, to take the conversation further, can you give us an intro about yourself and what you do for those folks who have not come across you before?
Absolutely. So, very simply put, I help women make more money. I am really passionate about doing so. So, for almost a decade, I have been a strategic life and business coach. And while for the first few years, I really didn't focus on money or like wealth as the outcome of our work together. But what I noticed is that every time I helped my clients get really clear in their sense of self worth, their net worth went up. And, I got that message over and over again until I could really start focusing on that result. Like, how do we help you make more money by really looking behind the curtain and being like, how do you feel about yourself? What's your relationship to money like? And how do we start to close that gap in between the two?
I love this. And I mean, we should definitely mention a few big milestones in your career, getting featured in major publications. And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, we can go in two directions there because I have also earned like a black belt in resiliency, and that resiliency helped propel me forward to get bigger features. So, again, over the past 7, 8 years, I had a massive reinvention in my life. Divorce was a huge milestone in my life. And when that marriage ended, I walked away with three little girls and the chance to totally start over. I had been a stay at home mom, and all of a sudden, I was financially independent and also 100% financially responsible. So, all of a sudden, I needed to create a new career for myself. And in the middle of doing that, I'd written a newspaper column. I wanted people to read the column, so I turned it into a blog when kind of early in the blogging days. And then through the blog, I became really great at using Instagram. And from there would help other entrepreneurial women start to grow their businesses using Instagram. And it was like the days before social media managers even existed. So that's all happening. And, one day out of the blue, I got a surprise cancer diagnosis. So now the reality of life was I was a single, self employed mother of three navigating breast cancer. And needless to say, it changed my life. It changed my life. And I feel like, there are a lot of coaches out there. And that felt like the moment I was really open and really public about the experience I'd had. I chose to go flat instead of having reconstructive surgery and was really open with that as well. And I think that felt like a galvanizing moment when people really started taking me seriously. That it was like, oh, okay, so she's not just kind of another life coach, quote unquote. She's really got some chops behind her. And from there, I was really able to leverage my career and leverage it all into a bigger success picture. And I ended up growing a multiple six-figure business that specifically supports entrepreneurial women in growing and scaling sustainably.
Wow. I thank you for sharing this story because I mean, you said it right when you said you have a black belt in resilience. And also I think it really defines your journey and what you help women achieve through what you have gone through yourself.
Yeah,
So,
thank
Lise,
you.
taking it back, I mean, today's conversation is really about emotional intelligence when it comes to money and how we can develop that emotional intelligence to help us
Mhm,
earn more money. So, to
mhm.
start this conversation, can you help us understand what does being emotionally intelligent in terms of finance mean?
So first, I'm going to back up one quick second and just look at usually when we think about money, we think about investments and saving or budgeting or spending. And I would call that all of the wealth IQ. Like, how do we look at these tools or how do we look at money as a tool to get us further ahead or further behind, depending on the case? Wealth EQ is really looking at our relationship to money. So, understanding how do we feel about money? Often, making a budget is not possible if money feels terrifying for you, right? If you are unaware of generational stressors or generational trauma, it's really difficult to enjoy spending your money when you've grown up with a culture and currency of the other shoe is about to drop, so you need to save every single penny and there will never be enough. And so, wealth EQ and being emotionally intelligent with respect to money and finance is being crystal clear in understanding your relationship to money, how you feel about it, and also how you feel about certain pain points that come up in that money story for you.
Lisa, I think a lot of people might think that also being emotionally intelligent when it comes to money is being conscious with how you spend your money, living below your means or within your means, um, returning the money that you borrow, and things like that. Does that fit into the definition or no? Or is emotional intelligence more so what you mentioned just now, just our feelings and our past experiences that are connected to money?
The latter. I feel like, being budget aware, being conscious, being uh, even earning more money and spending more money, that's as you go, that's still really a part of this IQ, like looking at this 20% relationship of how do we use money as a tool for us. But the 80%, I can tell you with great certainty, it's psychology. Like it's not math, it's not numbers, it's ego, it's pride, it's fear, it's disgust. It's a hugely emotional relationship. And once we're really super clear on our emotions about money, then we can kind of look back at our IQ or our financial picture that is more related to math, numbers, accountability.
Can we illustrate this definition in action, how people relate to money in real life?
Absolutely. I feel like each of us has, I mean, each of us has a relationship with money, whether we're aware of it or not. So if you think of like the last purchase you made, there's going to be an emotional response to it. I'm, this is the first time I've said this out loud, so I'm going to share it with you. I bought a Stanley mug. Are you familiar with the Stanley mugs?
Yes, I mean, I've seen it all over TikTok. I don't know how much it
Totally.
costs.
$46. And for anybody listening who doesn't know, it's a water bottle. And like it has a straw and it'll cool your water for you, but it's $46. I am not proud of this. However, how I arrived at this purchase was I have seen ads for them all over. They're so aesthetic, they're so beautiful. It's now part of a lifestyle brand, and I don't even drink a lot of water. So there's part of me that's like, oh man, if I had a Stanley mug, it's so beautiful. I could like capture myself on Instagram drinking water, like I would be a person who really takes care of myself if I had a Stanley mug. But the other part of it is that my three daughters, who were like in their tweens and teens years, they love Stanley mugs. And all they had to say to me, all they had to say to me was, it would be so aesthetic if you had a beige Stanley mug. And I was like, order it right now on Amazon. So that like it's such a silly example, but that mug is not about a mug. It's not about how cold I want my water to be or how much water I want to drink. It's about what's my perception of myself as a person who has this possession. It's an emotional relationship. We know numerically that a full 37% of women will use overwhelmed to describe their relationship to money. And that same percentage feels an overwhelming sense of guilt after they make a purchase. So there's so much emotion involved, and part of being emotionally intelligent, period, is like drawing that mindfulness or that self-awareness just to be aware of how you're feeling in that moment. So for anybody listening, like think back about any past decisions you've made, whether it was at the grocery store, like something really simple like that, or if it was planning a vacation, a pair of shoes that you're looking at, snow tires for your car. Like walk yourself through the purchasing decision and all the emotion that informed that decision, and that helps you become a little more in tune with how you're feeling.
I love this illustration, Lise. Thank you so much for doing that. And I mean, the Stanley mug, I agree with you. I fall prey to purchases like
Oh,
that sometimes too. I mean, I don't know who can justify a $200 coffee table book, but it's pretty. And if someone comes into my
so
home,
pretty.
it's going to make them somehow feel good in my place. And it makes the whole home cozy. So I
Yes.
agree with you. I think more often than not, our purchases are more emotional than they
Hmm.
are rational. And it's
Hmm.
cool that we're looking at it from a perspective of a feedback loop on our past money experiences and our beliefs about
Mhm.
money. So, how can one really evaluate their relationship with money and dig deeper when it comes to their emotional intelligence? How can we evaluate it?
It's easier than we think, but it feels really scary at first because, as you know, nobody wants to talk about money. I mean, we're outliers, and your show is an outlier, and your guests are all outliers, and your listeners are also outliers. So that's not a great example to use in this moment. However, really, the stats tell us that it's only like 1 in 3 women is actually comfortable talking about money, which means 2/3 of women are not. And for that 2/3 of women, like money is as taboo as talking about sex or like your favorite positions in bed. Like it's so confronting. So that is a real fear for a lot of people. So the first thing I always say is like, your feelings are valid here and your emotional response is valid. So if it feels intimidating, let yourself feel intimidated, and then also like invite yourself to take that courageous step of having a look. Like, what is this feeling that comes up around money? Where do I feel it in my body? And how does it make me feel? I have a friend who's another business owner, and she's really, really good at what she does, but she has a hard time making money at it, not because her sales are bad. Her sales are like through the roof, but because she feels a tremendous amount of guilt anytime she charges a client anything more than like $100 an hour. And so, we have to, it's hard and it feels scary, but we have to be able to have that honest conversation with ourselves. Like, all right, so when I think of money, I feel guilt, I feel fear. A lot of people feel shame or disgust. It's inviting yourself to have that like first courageous step to just be willing and able to look at your relationship with money. I also love personifying it. So if you just start to describe money as your boyfriend, like how would you describe that relationship to money? Is it loving, controlling? Is it fearful? Is it like almost ambivalent? Or is it nurturing and we want to spend time together and we want to get to know each other and we're invested in the relationship? Most people have some kind of an avoidant or highly insecure relationship with their money.
So, considering that, as you mentioned, 1 out of every 3 women does not feel comfortable talking about money, I think it's a quite big leap to go ahead and start talking with your girlfriends all of a sudden about your financial decisions and money. Maybe a baby step would be to journal about
Mhm.
money with some financial prompts to try to understand and really define what that relationship with money is. As you mentioned, I
Mhm.
really like the take on looking at your relationship with money from a perspective of a boyfriend or your
Mhm.
life partner. That's
Yeah.
a great tip. Let's say a person tries to understand what their relationship with money is. What is a healthy relationship with money and what is not a healthy relationship with money?
It's going to have a couple of common themes, but otherwise, just like interpersonal relationships, it's going to be so dependent on the person. But even to link those two things together, one of my favorite, I guess, practices with my clients is actually really getting clear on what enough feels like for you. So, because people can chase and chase and chase until they like make so much and they're still not happy, right? Or they save and they save and they save and they have so much money in the bank, but they're still not happy. What does enough look like? What does enough feel like for you in terms of what does a good or loving, healthy relationship feel like? We have to define that for ourselves by looking at like what does feel good. I mean, looking at your bank statement and feeling a pit of dread doesn't feel good for a lot of people. So that's probably going to be feedback that maybe there's some room to grow that relationship. Being able to, or getting that feeling of like, oh my God, money, I don't even want to talk about it, is like, okay, that's probably feedback that the relationship isn't super healthy because you can't even engage in it. But being able to say like, you know what, I'm going to like sit down with I like coffee over wine. Like I'm going to sit down with my coffee, maybe some ice water in my new Stanley mug, and I'm going to take a look at my bank account. I'm going to find a way of saving in like a TFSA, or I'm going to like make myself sit down and consciously figure out a savings plan. Or I might just be looking over my credit card statement, which for a lot of us can be a confronting experience on its own. But it's like giving yourself permission to engage in that relationship, I think is a great foundation for anyone who wants to have a healthier relationship with money.
I like the word that you said, staying conscious and being conscious of your financial situation. I think obviously a red flag when it comes to your relationship with money is acting as if that credit card statement doesn't exist, or
Yes.
looking at your bank account and the balances that you have in there won't really do anything for you. These are red flags.
Just like any other relationship, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to get some things right. Some moments are going to be, they're going to feel like they're perfect. And other times we're going to make mistakes. And then we need the self compassion and grace to walk ourselves through that learning process as well, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And at the end of the day, there is a big why behind having a healthy relationship with money and that emotional intelligence at place. It's because it will help us eventually earn more money. And I want to share a study that I came across when I was preparing for our episode. The study is by Talent Smart EQ, and it says that they tested the emotional intelligence of over 42,000 people and compared their scores to their annual incomes. They found that people with high EQs make an average of $29,000 per year more than people with low EQs. And on average, every point increase in emotional intelligence adds 1,300 to an annual salary. That's incredible.
That is fascinating.
So there is a
That's
direct
fascinating.
link, the direct relationship between what you believe about money and what your past experiences with finances teach you and how
Hmm.
much money you earn. I think a lot of people who listen to us, they work in a corporate world or they have their own business. But it all translates to how much money I allow myself to earn. If we're talking about someone who is going to be heading into a year-end performance review, who's going to have that conversation with their manager about a raise, how can they really prepare themselves emotionally, financially to ask for more?
Mm. I love this conversation. I think there's so much self coaching that goes into that. And it really is like there's kind of a rational approach, there's an emotional approach, and then there's the marriage of the two of them together. I mean, you can look at comparables, you can look at data, you can look at performance reviews, you can look at all of those like metrics that have a very clear ROI associated with them. And then on the more emotional side or the emotionally intelligent side, it's really being very clear about your own sense of value, your own sense of worth, really looking at what you value as a person and how you feel like you support the environment that you're in, what you contribute to that environment, and what needs to be recognized. If you're in an environment that doesn't share the same values set as you, that's going to be a little more difficult, and you're going to probably want to focus more on the ROI or like the more of the rational, let's say, approach. But really and truly, we have to get such a clear sense of what we are worth as a person and the value that we bring each and every day.
I was gonna say, what would you say to someone who is might be listening to us and realizing that they've lived their life up till now with money, limiting money beliefs,
Mhm.
and that and really avoiding that emotional intelligence when it comes to financial decisions? What should their action plan look like?
That's going to be dependent on the person too, but I think that first step is really being aware of it. Like, okay, my boundaries are being violated, or I'm not respected. This place doesn't align with my values set. Um, the action plan starts to come out of this sense of self awareness and deciding, how do I want to spend my time? There's no question that it's money that pays the bills, right? There's no question. We live in a capitalist society. Of course, this is the reality. However, we often have more options than we think that we do. And it's usually some kind of limiting belief or limiting perspective that tells us this is the only option. We see that in romantic relationships too. Like, I got to stay with this asshole because I could never do better than this. No, that's your trauma speaking that is guiding you to be in this relationship where you're disrespected. So it's using that same approach and looking at, like, I get one spin around on this planet. How is it that I value spending my time? And if I'm really clear on what my values are, then I can start to make that like calculated decision of, okay, is this a place where I can make a lot more money to finance the lifestyle I want to live? Or is time freedom so much more important to me that I'm willing to take a lower salary, for example, but I also never have to work on Friday afternoons, something like that. There's going to be this calculus that happens as to how we make our decisions based on our self-education and real like authentic understanding of ourselves.
Obviously, it's all easier said than done. So, Lise, can you share any resources, books, apps, programs that you believe could help our listeners take the next step?
Am I allowed to promote myself?
Go ahead.
I literally I literally created this course after working with so many women because it's like, as I said, it's a 7-day course, and I walk you through like how to actually change your relationship to money. It's even called Loving Money, and it's 7 days to end your self-sabotaging beliefs. I created it because it's pre-mindset. People think like, oh, all I have to do is change my money mindset, then I'm off to the races. No, we hold these traumas, we hold these stories and beliefs in our nervous system at an unconscious level. So wanting to make the change is an amazing first step. And then actually walking yourself through this trauma-informed approach is what I like literally do for a living. I am writing a book about it as well, but that's not coming out yet. There is a book called Happy Money by Ken Honda. It's got its bright yellow cover. It's so sweet. It's a great book, and it's all about wealth IQ and EQ, and he breaks it down in a really easy to read way that's pretty actionable.
Great tip. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure to include the link to your website in the episode description. So for those folks who are interested, you can check it out there. Lise, are there any final tips you want to share and thoughts on this topic before we start discussing what financial freedom means to you?
I think that anybody who's here listening and taking a moment just to pause and reflect gets a round of applause or a high five from me because, congratulations, you're one of the 15% of people in the world who actually does this kind of work. And I feel like just by pausing and giving yourself the opportunity to engage with this conversation means you're already taking yourself in the right direction. So again, high five.
I always end every episode with saying, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. So that's really, I think, what we're trying to deliver
Mhm.
today. Lise, so a question I ask every guest is, what does financial freedom mean to you, and what's your advice to women to achieve financial freedom? I think you have such an inspiring story, so I'm very excited to hear your take on it.
I hope I meet your expectations. But financial freedom to me is so closely linked to time. I value time freedom so much because I personally have so much on my plate. I'm a full-time mom of 3. I run an international business. Like, time is really important. So the ability to have the finances that let me say yes or no to something because I want to, not because I have to, is it's a huge metric. Like, that's true financial freedom. You have the ability to opt in or out, and you have the ability to spend your time how you really want to spend it. In terms of how to get there, as I said, like, it's not like a snap your fingers decision and everything magically goes your way. It's a really tough conversation with yourself about getting crystal clear on what you value and how are you putting your own values into action in your own life, and like following through on what's actually really important to you.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I agree with you. Money is power. And I think power lies in the ability to make choices that are
Mhm.
close to you and that give you options in terms of time and who you
Mhm.
spend your time with and what you do. So, Lise, thank you so much for being with us on the In Her Wallet podcast. I absolutely enjoyed this episode, and I'm confident that it'll be an impactful one for our community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that was it. I thank you all for being with us today. And as always, as I already mentioned, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. Once again, if you feel like In Her Wallet podcast brings you value in any way, I would so appreciate if you took 30 seconds, 1 minute of your time out of the day and left us a 5-star rating and a review if you feel like we have earned it. All of this helps me show up as a better host for you, helps us grow our audience, and really achieve our mission of helping more women take control of their finances. I can't wait to see you next week. Until then, be good.